Hey everyone, welcome back. You ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Awesome. So today we're going to be tackling a creature you might not be too familiar with.
Oh, intrigue me. Which creature are we talking about?
We're diving into the world of the American Marten, based on some pretty awesome research we got here. Ever heard them?
The American Marten. Yeah, I've come across them in my studies. Super fascinating creatures. Not your everyday backyard squirrel, that's for sure.
Definitely not. Picture this. A super stealthy, agile predator about the size of a house cat roaming the forests of North America.
Like a tiny, feisty Wolverine almost.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of feisty, these little guys, so despite their size, they have a huge impact on their environment, don't they?
Right. It's amazing how such a small creature can play such a big role. And you know what really stood out to me in the research?
What's that?
They have this bright orange or yellowish patch on their throat. It's not just for looks, right? Got to be some kind of evolutionary reason for that, I'm thinking.
Oh yeah, definitely. There are some theories about that. Could be a way for them to signal each other, especially during mating season.
Like, hey, good looking over here.
Exactly. Or it could be a form of camouflage, breaking up their outline in the forest, making them harder for predators to spot.
Oh, that's interesting. Like disruptive coloration, right? Breaks up their shape in the dappled light of the forest floor.
That's the idea. So even something as small as a patch of color can give us clues about their behavior and how they survive.
I love that. And speaking of survival, these martens are super dependent on their habitat, aren't they?
Totally. The research we have really emphasizes the importance of dense, mature forests, especially in those northern parts of the continent.
We're talking big trees, right?
Yeah.
Not just any old forest.
Oh yeah, gotta be the real deal. Think towering spruce, fir, pine trees. Those are the kinds of forests that provide everything a marten needs.
Makes sense. Shelter, food, a good place to raise a family.
Right.
It's all there.
Absolutely.
It makes me think, for anyone listening who lives near those kinds of forests, they might have a secret neighbor they don't even know about.
Right under their noses.
Okay, so we know where they live, but what are these martens actually eating out there in those forests?
Well, they're quite the versatile hunters, and that's a big reason they're able to thrive in all sorts of different environments.
Yeah, because when you think about it, forests could be pretty diverse places, not just one type of food available.
Right, so their diet includes small mammals like voles and squirrels. They're also known to go after birds, insects, even enjoy a bit of fruit from time to time.
Wait, hold up. They're not just strict carnivores then, like they have a sweet tooth too.
Exactly. They're what we call opportunistic eaters, meaning they're not too picky. They'll go for whatever's available. Super important, especially during those harsh winters when food can be hard to find.
So if a berry presents itself, they're not going to say no.
Not at all. They've even been known to scavenge for carrion if they need to.
Wow, that's pretty hardcore. So adaptable. Okay, here's something I don't quite get. The research mentions they're mainly nocturnal and solitary. Wouldn't being alone make it harder to find food and a mate?
That's a good question. Being nocturnal actually helps them avoid those bigger predators who are out and about during the day, like owls or foxes. And as for being solitary, you might think it's a disadvantage, but it actually reduces competition for resources in their territory.
So it's more like a strategic move. They've figured out a way to avoid the rush hour of the forest.
Precisely. They've carved out their own niche in the ecosystem.
And speaking of niches, let's talk about their reproduction. I was reading they mate in the summer, but the kits aren't born until the following spring. What's up with that?
Right. That's what we call delayed implantation. Pretty amazing adaptation. And it all comes down to timing, actually. Giving birth in the spring means the kits arrive when food is most plentiful.
So it's all about giving those little ones the best chance of survival. Makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. It's really incredible how in tune these animals are with their environment.
Speaking of the little ones, how many we're talking about in the litter?
Well, the litter size is usually pretty small, somewhere between 1 and 5 kits.
Okay, that's not a lot, especially compared to some other animals. Is there a reason for that?
Oh yeah, it's all connected. You see, having smaller litters actually plays a crucial role in keeping that whole ecosystem balanced.
I'm intrigued. Explain it to me like I'm 5, though. Why is that a good thing?
Okay, imagine if there were tons and tons of marten kits all needing to eat at the same time. That would put a huge strain on the populations of their prey,
That's how
right?
you see that.
And that could throw off the whole food web.
Like, it could have a domino effect on other animals and plants in the forest.
Exactly. So by having smaller litters, martens help keep those other populations in check, which in turn impacts everything from the types of plants to the overall health of the forest.
So they're like tiny forest guardians. They're keeping everything running smoothly.
Precisely. And that's why they're considered a keystone species. Their presence, even though they're small, has this ripple effect throughout the whole ecosystem.
That's pretty amazing. Makes you realize how important it is to protect these animals and their habitat, right?
Absolutely. Sadly, American martens are facing quite a few threats these days. Deforestation, habitat loss from human development, and of course, the impacts of climate change are all major concerns.
It's tough to hear, but it's reality. So what can we do? What can listeners do to help?
Well, supporting sustainable forestry practices is a huge one. Making sure logging is done responsibly so there's enough habitat left for martens and all the other creatures who call the forest home.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't realize the impact of their choices.
And there are also lots of local conservation organizations working to protect these animals. Getting involved with them can make a real difference.
It's a good reminder that we can all play a part, even in small ways. Okay, so before we wrap up, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will remember about the American Marten?
I think the biggest one is that even creatures we might not know much about can have a huge impact on the environment.
Totally. Don't judge a book by its cover, or Marten by its size.
And the other big thing is just how interconnected everything in nature is. The fate of the American marten is tied to the health of our forests, and that affects all of us ultimately.
That's a powerful thought. It's all about that big picture. And one last thing from the research that really stuck with me. It's believed that martens are actually super intelligent and even playful.
I know, right? It makes you wonder what other secrets they're hiding.
Makes me want to go on a marten safari.
Me too.
Yeah.
There's still so much we don't know about these elusive creatures. It's a reminder that there's always more to discover, often right in our own backyards.
So true. So next time you're in a North American forest, keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. You never know what you might find. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the American marten.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.